Nam yo ho ning ge cho 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 nam yo ho ning ge.
Hi, I'm Margaret Blaine. Today in our vlog, the topic is going to be, are obstacles problems or opportunities? Most people, when they come up against an obstacle, tend to think of it as a problem and think you're pretty crazy if you think an obstacle might be an opportunity. But let's look at what President Ikeda has to say on this topic. We all have a weak self and a strong self. If, in facing an obstacle, we allow our weak side to dominate, we can be defeated. Now, what that says to me is that when we're facing an obstacle, we are without question going to have an internal struggle between the negative and positive forces of ourselves, basically. Now, he's saying the obstacle becomes a problem when we fall into our lesser self, into those comfortable habits we're so familiar with. And what might some of those be? Well, we might be blaming somebody else for our situation, feeling like a victim, feeling controlled by others, resentful, discouraged, overwhelmed by doubts, knowing that this time the mystic law isn't going to work, and holding on to limiting beliefs that are keeping us from growing. Now, an obstacle becomes an opportunity when we're in our greater self. And that looks quite different. In our greater self, we're taking full responsibility for our circumstances, both good and bad. And we know we have the power to change those very circumstances. We have faith in our connection with the mystic law that anything's possible. And you know that nothing can control you without your permission. A person in the greater self is constantly breaking through, growing, moving forward. Now, in order to shift out of the lesser self, because this is what we're going to want to do when we're facing an obstacle, first of all, we need to even become aware that that's where we are. Because when we're in our lesser self, it is the way the world is, and we're sure of it. I mean, we've learned that from everybody, right? So we have to become aware that that's not necessarily the way the world is. And sit down and chant for courage. Chant for faith. Chant until you feel an inner shift, and you know you're on the higher part of yourself. That's when the obstacles are going to become an opportunity. So what are the opportunities that obstacles give us? Well, one of the first ones is when you're chanting for an obstacle, you're expanding your identity. You're saying, this is the person I want to be. This is what I want to do. And in my experience, that birth can be very arduous indeed. When I was writing my first book, I came up against the worst resistances of my life. I fought every step of it, having to grow, having to write, having to follow through, all of those things. But when you do, when you gear in and you follow through all the way to the end, something changes. And instead of being an aspiring writer, I became an author. My identity had expanded. Yours will too. An obstacle gives us an opportunity to deepen our faith. Because when we have repeated experience with goals working out over and over that we knew were impossible to begin with, after a while, doubts begin to drop away. And you become intensely curious as to how this is going to work out this time. By now, you know everything can be a source of creating happiness and value, no matter what it looks like initially. Goals allow us to become strong mentally. We have to develop perseverance, follow through, never giving up. We have to learn to deal with our personal limitations because every time we come up, against a major obstacle, we're going to have to expand our lives. It gives us the opportunity to break through our fundamental darkness, where we stop doubting the mystic law. And we learn to stay mentally positive, focused on what we want, no matter what ups and downs come in the process. Obstacles allow us the opportunity of developing a deep internal emotional stability. No matter how things appear on the surface, you know they're always going to. Every time you have a goal, there are going to be ups and downs, and there are going to be times when you think it's never going to work out. But no matter how things appear on the surface, that you trust that connection with the mystic law to see you all the way through to the end. And you don't fall into the emotional pits of discouragement, upset, and feeling shaken. Over time, you learn not to be swayed by the 8 winds and not to fall into those emotional pits. And it doesn't matter what other people think either about what you're doing with your goal and your obstacle. Obstacles allow us to bring out our dormant abilities. We get very creative when we're faced with something like that, and we develop abilities we didn't even know we had. And obstacles allow us to change our destiny. When we change who we are, what we're thinking, saying, and how we're acting, our whole future changes. As we all know, it comes from the inside out. As Daisaku Ikeda says, obstacles are a golden opportunity to quickly forge an inner self that is indestructible as a diamond. You can do it. If you like this post, you might like these as well. The first is conquer overwhelming circumstances with Buddhist practice. The second is guaranteed 12 steps to break through deadlock. The third is, the truth is, you're not alone facing a difficult obstacle. Take a look below for the URLs. Our next topic is going to be why determination is important when chanting for a goal. And I'll see you in 2 weeks.